Well, now that we've seen the basics of using HTML to format our page content, let's take a look at how to add styles using CSS. Our pages will look pretty boring without them, and by using CSS, you can design the page to look however you want. I have a file for us to use in this lesson in the Section 3 Styles folder called styles-sample HTML. So let's open that up here in our text editor so we can see what we have to work with. Here we have just some sample text which is broken up into paragraphs and some headings, and a list here at the bottom. Let's also open up the page in the browser to see what it looks like now. Without any additional styles, we can see that by default, most browsers will show us black text using the Times New Roman font. And although our headings do get some size increases and some bolding, for the most part, we're just seeing normal font weight and size for the paragraphs and list. Now back over in the document, we can add CSS styles directly to any HTML tag by using the style attribute. I'll set the style attribute here on the first heading. We just separate it from the tag name with a space and use an equal sign and enclose our style in quotes, just like all the other attributes we've used so far. Now to set a style, we need two parts, a style property and a value. I'll be going over lots of different properties in this series, but for our first property, let's try out a simple one, and I'll use text-align. And of course, that's going to set the alignment of our text. We set the value for the property by typing a colon and then entering a value. For this example, I'll set it to right, which will give us a right alignment. And then we finish out the style by typing a semicolon, and of course, closing the quotes for our attribute. Now let's save that change, and we'll go see what it does to our page. I'll go back out to the browser and refresh. And now, as you would expect, our heading is moved over to the right side of the browser window. We can use this style property on any block of text in our document. So next let's go back and try it out on a paragraph instead. I'll set it down here on the third paragraph. I'll just copy the style that we wrote before and paste it into the paragraph. But this time let's try out another alignment, and we'll use justify instead. You can see the right side of this paragraph is currently ragged and not very aligned, but when I save our change and we go out to the browser and refresh the page, now our paragraph lines up with both the right side and the left side of the browser window. Now what if we wanted to make all the paragraphs justified? We could add a style attribute to each one of the paragraphs, but with CSS there's an easier way. We can use a style tag to set up rules that will work for the whole page. The style tag goes up in the head tag up here at the top, so we'll add one just below the title. Of course, like our other tags, it has an opening style tag and a closing style tag. And inside the tag is where we'll set up our style rules. For each rule, we need a selector which tells the page where to apply the style. And the easiest selector to start with is a tag selector, which just uses the name of the tag. To set a style for our paragraphs, I'll just type P, and then we use a set of open and close curly braces to enclose our properties and values. Inside these brackets, I'll use the text-align property again, and just like for our attribute, I use a colon to separate it from its values. We'll use justify here, and we'll close the rule with a semicolon, exactly like our style attribute value. Now when I save the page, and we go back out to the browser and refresh, you can see that each one of my paragraphs are aligned on both the right and the left sides. Now we can easily make style rules for multiple page elements without needing to use the attributes in every tag. I'll go back to the style tag and set up a rule for all the H1 tags now. I'll just go below the rule we created for the paragraph, and this time I'll type H1 for the selector. Again, we need a set of open and close curly braces, and we'll add in our property. I'll stick with text-align for now, type a colon, and this time we'll use a center alignment, once again closing our rule with a semicolon. Now I'll save and go back out to the browser and refresh. Now you can see our second H1 tag is centered just like we thought it would be. But notice that the first tag is still right aligned up here at the top. That's because this particular tag now has two styles set on it. Our style rule says it should be center aligned, but our style attribute says it should be right aligned. What we're seeing here actually demonstrates a very important way that CSS works, and it also explains the CSS name. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet, and the cascading part describes how the style rules will be applied. Our style rules will always be applied from the top down. So if we take a look at the document again, the first rule is up here in the style tag, and the second one is down lower in the style attribute. So as you can see, if you ever have a style that conflicts in your settings, the browser will use the last value it sees to set the style. Now imagine that we wanted to use the same rule on an entire website, which has many pages. We certainly don't want to have to copy any style tag change we make to every single page. A large website could have hundreds or even thousands of pages. So for this, we'll use a style sheet. A style sheet is just a separate text file which contains all our style rules. To make one, I'll just create a new file with my text editor. And for this example, so we have a style to start with, I'll go back to our document, and I'll take the H1 rule that we just created. I'll select it and cut it out of the page, and then go over to our new document and paste it in. As you can see, the formatting for this is exactly the same as what we use inside the styles tag. Now, just so we have something to change, let me take this opportunity to show you a little bit more advanced selector. Suppose we wanted the H2 tags to also be centered. We could make another style rule, but since we want the same exact property and value, I can modify the selector here by adding a comma after the H1 tag, and then simply typing in an H2 tag. Now this selector will apply the style to both our H1 and H2 tags. Now of course we need to save our new text file, and I want to leave it inside the Section 3 Styles folder. I'll just call it Style Sheet, but make sure the file extension is .css instead of .txt. Now we need to go back to our document and make sure that our HTML page uses the style sheet. For that, I'll go back up inside of our head tag, and just underneath the title here, I'll add a link tag. In the link tag, we need to set up a few attributes to get our style sheet to work right. The first one is href, and we use it to set the location of the file. I'll use an equal sign and quotes, like always, and this location works just like the source for our images. Since our style sheet is in the same folder as our HTML document, it'll just be the name of the file. The next attribute is rel, short for relationship. The value for this attribute will tell our document how this file should be used, and it will just be a style sheet. Now the last attribute we need to use is called type, and it tells our document what kind of file this will be. For this, we'll use text/CSS. Now our link tag is a self-closer, so I'll add a slash and then the closing bracket at the end. Now I'll save our document. And of course we've saved our changes to our style sheet as well. Let's go out to the browser and refresh the page and take a look. Now you can see the style sheet has kicked in and our H2 tags are now centered as well. And of course our document is still following cascading rules because our top heading over here is still right aligned. If we review the order of our styles, we have our style sheet first, then we have our style tag. So any conflicting styles here in the tag will override the style sheet. And finally, we have our style attribute down here lower in the document. So any conflicts here will override them both. Now you can use any of these methods to create the style for your pages. A style sheet is good for style rules that you want to use all over your entire website. A style tag is good for just the page that we're on. And of course, the style attribute will apply the style only to the tag that it's set to. It's up to you to decide which place is best for your style rules. For the rest of this section, I'll be using the style tag and the style attributes since we only have one page. But for our website project, we'll get to practice using the style sheet more, so that the style rules we create can be used for all the pages of the site. Well, now we know how and where to create our style rules. In the next lesson, we'll take a look at some more CSS properties that we can use to control our page.